Here comes old Nervous. Come on, bring it up. You better be careful, friends, fellow sufferers, my fellow natives, my fellow marchers along the yellow brick road of whatever the heck it is we're marching along the yellow brick road of, or the great old Emerald City there just on the other side of the horizon. You just better be careful because old Shep is going to play it very cool tonight. I'm going to play it close to the vest. There's going to be no kazoo blowing. There's going to be no, let's see, what is this thing here? There's going to be no Jew's heart plucking. And that reminds me of something else. Well, there won't be that either. It's a big enough there. What do you mean? I was talking about chicken plucking. Ever heard of Now, cut it. That's it, Tony. All set. Here, I'm here. Hello. Testing. Hello, 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, you just can't trust, you know. It's a funny thing. I'm an old electronics type from way back. Listen, I have the RF burn scars to prove it. Did you hear the show that I did the other night, any of you, on radar? And, oh, say, fellas, you hear that show? Well, that's a fantastic show there. I got a tremendous amount of mail from Cherry Grove. And, tremendous amount of mail on that one. And, it's funny, I didn't know they still made purple stationery. Wow. Powder and wonderful perfume in it. But nevertheless, as an old electronics type, I can only say I am fantastically gassed, Tony. You're an electronics type in there in the control room. With this rocket. Did you read about that rocket? Did you read what that thing does? Did you read that there was a whole big, you know, it's funny how we're talking about this rocket going up there past Mars. Right at this minute, it's hard to believe, you know, these things are so abstract. But it is hard to believe that there is a little thing that we made. We made this, you know, a bunch of guys walking around wearing jockey shorts, and you know, their socks got holes in them, and their shoes are running over, and they're having trouble with their nose running and all that stuff. A bunch of ordinary human beings made this thing that is now flying right this very instant right past Mars. And in fact, isn't it at 10:30 that thing's going to start sending its pictures back? It already did? Oh, I see. I think it's now doing it again. It's sending it. And the only trouble they had with, naturally, I could have told them, the recording engineers. I have fought recording engineers all of my life. These guys with their cheap Japanese tape recorders, that $2 tape and all that stuff, and their 25-cent mines. Listen, that's a big weak link in civilization. However, the idea of this rocket going past Mars, sending back photographs, and right now they're beginning to put them together. You know, these were sent over comparatively a long period of time, electronically speaking. They didn't just, boom, send it back, the picture, and they throw it in the dark room and into the hypo, and it was developed. You know, they sent it back in the mosaic system. You know what I mean? This is a very complex system. But nevertheless, can you imagine the excitement that would accrue, would explode if these guys got this thing down in the hypo, and they're all excited. They're all standing around there, and there's a couple of generals in there, and there's a big physicist and 7 or 8 guys in the dark room are very official with little badges, secret, classified, stay out, and all that. And they begin to see these pictures coming out. Hey, it's coming out, Chief. Yeah, here it is. And they turn that little red light on it, like that. They turn the red light on it, and all of a sudden, General, would you please come over here and take a look at this picture? And the general comes over. He's played by Louis Stone or C. Aubrey Smith, the general. So let me see those pictors, son. Gadzooks. By George. This is flak. There's a picture of flak. Anti-aircraft fire. Do you realize what that would mean? It's serious. What would we do if a rocket flew over it? We'd shoot at it. It's as simple as that. We'd send up rockets. Well, what if a rocket was flying over the world at 5,000 miles an hour, believe me, every country in the world that's got them would send up rockets after it. They would. And if that rocket is sending pictures back to Saturn, the pictures would be a bunch of rockets coming at it, and a couple of them going, wow, what a scene. Now, seriously, we're very interesting things, man. We really, I shouldn't, it's funny, we're very self-conscious. We're self-involved with this odd creature. And nobody ever really seriously believes. Actually, a lot of people would love to have it be. A lot of people would like the idea to come out and be that way. But nobody ever secretly, way down in the heart of hearts, actually believes there is another civilization. Really, I mean, an operating civilization. Guys are having parking problems and yelling and banging into each other at intersections, and little old ladies are coming out of the stores with shopping bags full of ham bones and baked beans and that kind of stuff. We just can't accept that idea. Now, I'm going to ask you a question, serious question right now. What would happen in the world, all over the world, if, as they take these pictures into the darkroom and develop them, it becomes evident, absolutely without question, evident, that there is a genuine, flourishing, operating, vital, dynamic civilization on Mars? Now, everyone is listening and saying, oh, come on, Shepard, oh, blah, blah, blah. That shows that problem. We're saying, oh, come on, Shepard, come on, science fiction jazz. No, seriously, it's an interesting and a serious question. Now, if they take that, it's an important question, too, because there is a possibility somewhere this may happen at some time in our history. May not now, maybe it isn't Mars, But if they took that picture, they developed it, and there it was. There it was. Now, I suspect the first thing that would happen, there would be a gigantic security clamp. Boom, like that. And there would be high-level meetings, of course, there would have to be. There would be telephone calls all over the world by not only top men, but top men. I suspect that within 10 minutes after they got these pictures back from the drugstore, by the way, who is developing these? I hope it's better than the outfit that developed my last ones with the thumb over my. That was terrible. But nevertheless, within 10 minutes, I'm sure the president would be on the red hotline to somebody in the Kremlin. It'd have to be. Just have to be. And immediately somebody would say, wait, I will make a call now. Don't you call Castro, I'll call him, wait. And the next thing you know, he's on the phone to this guy, they got Mao, and instantly there would be about 10 or 12 top men in the world who would know, K-N-O-W, know. And they would have to call other important people, not only heads of state, they would have to call other people who are going to be vitally concerned with this. The Pope. They'd have to call Dr. Peel. We'd have to clear that with headquarters. They would have to, seriously, they'd have to call, believe me, they'd have to immediately call one of the top networks who would want to, they want to do a remote, a lot of things, somebody would have to immediately be told about the film rights and that, but that's all that would come later. But can you imagine, though, the kind of discussions that would go on? All right, now, these guys know this. Then what would happen? I suspect the following would then occur. The president, it would be announced that the president is going to make a special broadcast that would be telstarred around the world. I suspect this is the way it would work. And sure enough, there would be that moment at 8 o'clock and everybody's waiting, and they would say, naturally, they would have to make an announcement that a speech would be made, an announcement would be made of worldwide earth-shaking importance. Everybody would listen. I'll tell you, they really would. It's not going to be a discussion of poverty in West Virginia. It's not going to be a discussion of civil rights. Earth-shaking importance. And can you imagine the rating? 18 billion people are watching or hearing or listening. In the jungle, there are guys sitting there with their little 7-inch TV sets. The guys got their transistor plugged in. And the president comes on, and he is introduced. They say, ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States. And then the president would appear on screen, and he would say, fellow citizens, I have a grave announcement that must be made at this time. It is an announcement of the gravest import for peoples everywhere in the world. My announcement should be prefaced by a personal statement saying that I consider this probably the greatest moment in all of mankind's history. It was reported today, reliably, and I have the photographs here before me. We will show them to you in just a few moments, that there is, indisputably, without question, there is a civilization that could be as large, if not possibly larger than ours, existing on the planet Mars. Boom! That would hit. Talk about you-know-what hitting the fan. I'll tell you. I'll tell you. Yeah, I just wonder what the reaction would be. The other night, I'm on ham radio, 5 o'clock in the morning. It's funny, I'll give you a little personal interpolation here. And I'm talking to another ham here in town. And he's a writer for the New York Times, a guy I talk to quite a lot. He writes for the Times Magazine supplement. He's a science writer. And a good guy. Both of us are sitting there talking, and it's 5 in the morning, and you can just see the edge of sunlight coming up over just the tips of the buildings, a little touch of the bridge there, and you could smell a little of New Jersey is beginning to start for the day. They're pouring a little smog into the air, and you could begin to smell Secaucus, they were starting it up over there. And the whole day was beginning, and the first trucks are going past. Blah, 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 blah. If you ever listen to this town wake up, boy, it's great. And it's 5 in the morning, and we're the only 2 guys in the band. And we're talking about this subject on amateur radio, using technical electronic means of communication. And that we both came to the conclusion, in a nutty kind of way, from opposite ends of the pole, not only would this be a psychological, economic, socio-religious, who knows what revolution, it just wouldn't stop. But that most people walking around on the street would be totally untouched by it, in a crazy sort of way. Really, because I just don't know what the percentage of people in the world have the kind of imagination that are interested, that is the type of imagination that is interested in something as abstract as another civilization 140 million miles away from Passaic. Because I find very few people do have that kind of imagination. I'm surprised at the number of people, for example, who do not see any romance in sending a man to the moon. They're just totally earthbound people. They say, well, come on, what do you mean sending it? It's all a big political gimmick. It's graft, boondogling. What if they do something about Fordham Road? Now, what if they do something about the holes on 6th Avenue? Now, what if they take all that money out of millions of dollars? Why, they could spend it to fix the road. That's what they ought to do. Totally unmoved by larger considerations of romance. You know what I mean? I just don't see it. And to me, the excitement of seeing, this is a dream that man has had for countless ages. So far back, they suspect that one of the very first things that man wondered about was the other worlds. Didn't wonder as much about his world as he wondered about the other worlds right from the beginning. And imagine those, almost all the Indian mythology, the American Indian mythology is based on the planets and the moon. And they stood and they watched this, if you've ever been out on those, maybe people in big cities are not as moon or planet conscious as people who live on the Great Plains or the oceans or countries where they can see the planets and they can see the moon. And I remember standing on a dock. It's funny, one of the great titles, I think, in American literature is A.B. Guthrie's The Big Sky. That's a beautiful title. We don't have a big sky in New York. Just no big sky, that's all. Now, you think maybe when you go out to Jones Beach, you're looking at a big sky. You're really not. Not at all. because there is something about the horizon. There's something about the horizon of the genuine big sky countries that seems to be untouchable. The horizon just is like the horizon of the ocean itself. Where is that horizon when you're standing on the shore looking out to the sea? You know, it's just endless. It goes on, and the sky is like some huge bowl. You're looking at the inside of it. It goes on and on and on and on. Now, a big sky also implies clear air. You don't have a big sky if you have smog, or if you have industrial waste and glop and crud in the air like we have here, you know. You get out there in the big sky country, and you stand and look up at the sky, and there is nothing that dominates you more than the heavens. It dominates you more than the ground on which you're walking. Literally, it really does. To any of you who've been up, have you ever watched the Northern Lights? Have you ever gone up in northern Maine or up into Canada? And it's late in the fall, and you see that black sky. Gee, it's so black. It's so black it's purple, you know. And there is that giant sky up all over. It's just going on, and billions and billions and billions of lights and stars and shooting stars. You see shooting stars like dandelions in a field in a place like Maine or northern Michigan at the right time of the year, and that's coming up, by the way. Then in let's see, mid-August is when it really starts, and you see those. You just see the whole heavens covered with these things. And then you see the Milky Way like some great slash going across the sky. And off in the north, those flickering, gray, silver, eerie, silent curtains that just go... You can almost hear them. If you listen in your mind, you can hear the rustling. Boy, no wonder the Eskimos see things in the stars. Really. No wonder the natives who wandered the Great Plains, the Indians in America, saw things in the sky which, you know, you couldn't help it. It seems to be up there alive and moving. And the idea of sending a rocket to the moon, the idea of sending a rocket to Mars, has been really a dream for countless centuries. Now, that dream does not really filter down, I suspect, to large numbers of earthbound people who just look at the environment they live in and accept it totally. They have no curiosity. To me, the dead man is the man with no curiosity. And I'm talking about what they call profound curiosity. That's very different from nosiness. Now, I'm talking about a deep curiosity that keeps saying, why? You know, they often say that the only people who have that are kids. Well, that's quite true. And old people. It's the guy in the middle who gets all hung up at BBD&O who doesn't answer or ask the question why. He really thinks that the question why resolves itself into getting the copy out. He thinks, why? What do you mean why? So I can get a new car. That's why. That's what it's all about. You know? Well, a man who's 89 doesn't think that anymore. A kid of 12 doesn't think that either, because he's not yet been involved. He hasn't been sucked into this great material world of kids and wives and houses and Darien and breezeways and double vodka sours and all that stuff. And he's not in that scene yet. So he stands around and he looks and, holy smokes, look at that. Wow. You know, and the old duffer, too. You see these old guys in Maine. Can you imagine? I'm up in Maine here last year. And I saw a guy who must have been 78 years old would come out every night and sit on the end of the dock in this dark lake and look at the stars. Just look at the stars. He didn't go out to enjoy the moon, you know, a romantic concept. He'd go out and look at these stars. And I'd come out on the dock once in a while, and here's look at the stars. Just looking at the stars. And I don't know of anything more exciting than that, really. But I'm wondering, I'm really curious about the profound, unbelievable, fantastic uproar that would occur if tomorrow morning they took these pictures, and the first thing that swam into view from 5,000 miles was a gigantic drive-in movie. Oh, boy. I mean, you know, speaking of, that's talking about going from the ridiculous to the sublime or vice versa. That reminds me, this is WOR, AM and FM, New York. And let's continue with our ridiculous world. Hit it there, Tony.
Miller High Life in pop and pour cans. Distinctive Miller High Life in pop and pour cans. Just pop and pour Miller High Life, the champagne of bottled beer. No opener needed. And inside every can, enjoy the hearty yet light goodness of Miller High Life. Brewed from a century-old recipe, only in Milwaukee. Miller High Life always gives you that perfect taste in beer every time. Always a bright, clear taste. Unequaled, unquestioned, unchanging. Now you can enjoy refreshing Miller High Life in pop and pour cans. Pop and pour Miller High Life. Always sparkling, flavorful, distinctive. Now in pop and pour cans.
Pop and pour cans. Here we're concerned with the ultimate answers. But, you know, we are torn between these two things, you know. It's a very, I think this is one of the things that makes us really the wild, peculiar creature we are on the face of the globe, really, in this cosmos. We're torn between these two things, pop and pour cans, which is the pure animal in us, guzzling beer. We're torn between these two sides of us, which are very earthbound. We walk around, we're just a sweating animal that is wanting to fill its stomach and procreate and all these. This is one side of man, which is the pure animal side. No matter how hard we dress it up, we can get lithographed beautiful pictures of ancient druidic ruins and put them on the beer can. We're still slugging beer down. No matter how we dress up our procreation activities by writing great romantic fables about it, by becoming Shakespeare and calling it Romeo and Juliet, by writing something called Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. It all boils down to the same thing. I mean, it does, ultimately. And we have a tendency, of course, to romanticize everything we do, no matter what it is, drinking beer or there it is. But the other side of us is this curious, indefinable side that nobody quite has yet been able to pin down or to analyze, and that's that side, that's that strange thing that wants to send a rocket to Mars. It's not concerned with any of the animalistic qualities or behavior patterns and so on, which is part of our daily life. You know, I was really fascinated to see that how really little this immense thing, how little this has been talked about on the air. I was listening today, and the people are interviewing elderly lady authors who have written books about how to spay cats, this went on and on and on all day long, and there's hardly anybody's mentioning this fantastic thing. And way down at the end of every newscast, just before the weather and right after the Shearson Hamill report, somebody would say, well, this rocket is, they're going to get the pictures of the rockets out there by Mars, and now the weather. And all the while, the big stories, whether Paul Beamer or Scrivane or whatever his name is making a speech, and this guy's making that thing. And all the while, this rocket is sailing around Mars, and incidentally having trouble with its tape recorder, which I think makes the whole thing human. It really somehow I can see these guys in the master control there. They're pressing the button. Somebody says the tape recorder is stuck, and somebody says, well, so was mine at home. It never did. It always did that. They say, oh wow, and ultimately, of course, we'll get one up there with a good tape recorder, and then probably the antenna will fold up. And but nevertheless, we're doing it, man. I mean, there's no question about it. And I think that this spirit is always in us. Why does man fly kites? You ever wondered about that phenomenon of kite flying? Just ask yourself, why do you fly a kite? That's a totally useless behavior. And there it is, though. It's reaching up. It's a special esoteric kind of play. And you know that kite flying has been for many, many ages, has been a special quality of certain civilizations. The older a civilization gets, the more it knows its terrain. The older it is on its terrain. In other words, the tireder a civilization gets, the more it has a tendency to fly kites. That Japan, which was a civilization which had been for thousands of years kind of at a period of stasis, nothing happening. It was all solidified into social areas. Everybody was so tightly controlled by social mores. They bowed and scraped, and everyone had a special way of bowing, and a special way of sitting, and a special way of eating, and a special way of talking. The theater was a special, very, very classical, and nothing ever changed. That was the whole point. It had come to kind of the state of a fly in a piece of amber. Well, kite flying then took over, and millions of people flew kites. Now, it's a kind of escape. Away, wow, let's go. Do you know that kite flying, for a long time in England, before the current revolution that's going on in England now, which will probably change everything, the whole thing, there'll be a different kind of flying, that kite flying, for a long time in England, was a way of escaping. That elderly gentlemen and ladies and kids, everybody would go out to the park and fly kites. I'll ask you a literary question here for those of you. Who wrote a great allegorical story on that? What English author wrote a fascinating short story on a guy who would go out every Sunday and fly kites? To the point where his wife began to realize that it was a true escape, and it wound up in a murder. And the opening of the story, I believe, if I remember correctly, took place in a cell. The man flew kites every Sunday. I believe the name of the story was The Man Who Flew Kites. Who was the author? I think this strange little story said more about a whole area of human existence than most so-called more profound authors. He's not considered a profound author. I will reward you the brass figurine with bronze oak leaf. Why do I remember this trivia? But maybe it's because I'm basically a kite flyer. Now, speaking of flying kites, let's see, do you have another one of those whoopies in there? Please hit the button. There we go.
Sooner or later, it's going to happen. Your cigarette will start to taste dull and flat. That's the time to brighten up your taste with a good taste of Kent. Yes, Kent will brighten up your taste, because Kent is good. Light up a Kent. You've got a good thing going. Good tobaccos. The Kent filter for good taste going when you light up a Kent. Good. So good. So good tasting. Good taste going when you light up a Kent. Brighten up your taste. Light up a Kent and you've got a good thing going.
That's one way to get a good thing going. I like to be the kind of guy you could settle for a bottle of Pepsi and a Kent. That's your good thing. But we got to get a couple other commercials here. We have Orenstein's here tonight, which is a new commercial. I've been hearing Peggy and these people talk about it on the air, and I'll tell you, curious thing about the abstraction between hearing about a thing and actually seeing it. I went down there with Bob Alden, one of our salesmen today, and it's one of those things, oh, wow, all right, I'll go down and see the sponsor. Well, it's funny, when you live in a certain part of a city like New York, you begin to forget all other parts of the city. You really do. It's like they don't exist anymore. Whole areas where once you did things and lived and existed, suddenly somehow disappear. This isn't part of the commercial yet. I'll tell you when. Baby, no, it isn't. No, it is not, because I'm talking about something that has nothing to do with, all right, so that's Jack. All right, they're through with their commercial. All right, then. But I will tell you when I'm going to start the commercial. But I went down to this part of New York. There's nothing to do with Orenstein, so forget it. I went down to this part of New York with Bob, and it is truly old New York. Now, do you know what I mean by old New York? I remember as a kid living out in Hammond, Indiana. Now, I do not even know what class this was in. It was in grade school. We had a whole, books. We had geography books, and there would be a pink map of Asia, and there would be a blue map of Europe. What book this was, I don't know, but it was about America. Now, it might have been an American history book. I don't know, but I remember a picture. It was one of these woodcut engraving type pictures that covered the whole page, and it had a piece of tissue paper in there, to keep it clean and all that stuff. And this was a picture of old New York. Now, I remember it was connected with a famous man in New York, this picture. It said something about Edward Bok, B-O-K. And it said Mulberry Street in old New York. And I saw that picture remains in my mind. I'm sure that there are a few pictures, if you really dredge back into your mind, things that you remember from being a kid, a picture in a book, a reader. Now, you have to have something to trigger that remembrance. But I had not remembered that picture ever. It never came to my mind, that picture. Well, today I took my motorcycle down, and Bob is sitting on the back, and we go straight down Broadway. Can you imagine? Yeah, we did. He's sitting on the back, and we're going down Broadway. It's a funny thing, a little remark that has to be reported to you. You might appreciate this, John. Bob Alden, who's our ace salesman, is sitting on the back of my motorcycle. And I'm sitting in the front there, and I got the goggles on, and we're going straight down Broadway in the sunshine. It's 98 and 44 100% hot, in New York, and the sun is beating down. We're going, whipping around the cabs and going down. We hit about 14th Street on Broadway there. It's getting down into the swinging part of New York, And there's giant crowd of traffic, and I'm looking around, and Bob's looking around, and all of a sudden, Bob says to me, "Shep." I said, "What, Bob?" He says, "Has it occurred to you we're two grown-up men?" He says, "What the heck are we going downtown for this? Why don't we just stay on this thing and go?" I said, "Well, all right." So we're going down on the sun is beating, the cabs are going. Now we're getting further and further down. And suddenly we hit Canal Street, which is where I was aiming, and I turned left on Canal. And there it was. It just hit me with a fantastic belt on the top of the head. I kept saying to myself, what the heck does this remind me of? What the heck is it? And I put the motorcycle in the parking lot, and I walked out, and it hit me. Mulberry Street. It's old New York. Boy, and is it swinging. There are pizza joints. There are guys walking around eating hot dogs with the sauerkraut hanging out, and there are guys wearing old slouch hats, and there's about 85,000 languages being spoken. And boy, is that part of New York alive. It is A-L-I-V-E, alive. Now, you go up on the Upper East Side, there's a lot of people, but there's a deadness in the air. I can't describe it. I know that area like I know the back of my hand. It's like you're in some big air-conditioned mausoleum. Up around 57th or 60s, sure, it's pretty, but it is not alive. When I first came to New York, now we'll get into some personal reminiscences, I spent quite a long period of time, and a long, hot summer particularly, living in what I consider one of the great sections of New York, Lower 2nd Avenue, off 7th Street. Boy, if this isn't a live neighborhood. Boy, you'd throw your window open, and instantly you would be smacked in the face with the smell of 16,000 blintzes being quietly cooked away there, to that crispy, fantastic cheese quality. You can smell it in the air, And this is this is to me New York. I'm sorry. This is New York. The other is the East Side. The other is the West Side. But this is New York. And so I go down to this place, and all of a sudden I'm in the middle of it all. And I'd heard Peggy, and I'd heard a lot of people talk. But it never came alive to me. Now, the name of the place, now we're going to start the commercial. This is Orenstein's at 213 Canal between Baxter and Mulberry. I'm not selling you anything, seriously. It's a place where they sell crystal, and it's stuff. It's fine. You see crystalware, you see silverware. It's very expensive type stuff. That's what got me, It's that Fifth Avenue type cut crystal from England and from Germany and every place. And it's right down there in the middle of that wild scene. And it's a lot cheaper than it is anywhere else. That's the point. But it's Orenstein's at 213 Canal Street, and, for gifts and brides and all that jazz. I mean, that's the end of the commercial, all right? 213 Canal Street, Orenstein's. Or Orenstein's. I don't know how they pronounce it, but Boy, what a neighborhood that is. And I walked out there, you know, and here, the first time it's happened to me in a long time, most people just accept everything up here without looking at it. My motorcycle is parked by the side of the street. I come out of this place. We've had lunch in a typical Lower East Side joint, you know, where they sell Italian food, and it comes out in a giant platter, and people are yelling, and guys are sitting up by the bar swigging beer, you know. Oh, wow, I'm back in New York, and all of a sudden I feel great. And I walk out of this joint, and there's my motorcycle sitting there, and there are two ancient duffers looking at it very carefully. They are looking at it very carefully, and you can see these guys have been in New York since about, I'd say roughly since about the time the third shipment of pilgrims arrived. And they're standing there and they're looking at it, and they've got their rimless glasses, and they've got long black coats, and they're looking at my motorcycle. And I get on the motorcycle, and they're looking real closely at me. They're standing right next to me, looking down at it, and one says, "Well, how does that work?" And I say, "Well, now watch, I'll start it." And it's got a self-starter on it, you know. I'm preaching the thing, like, blah, 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 blah. He said, "But you don't have to kick it. But always be having the motorcycles be kick. Always be kick. You mean it starts like that?" And I says, "Yes, it does." He said, "Well, I'll be doggone, for heaven's sakes." Off I go. Right, George, I'm back in New York. Well, how can you explain that to a Martian? And how can you even explain that kind of New York to somebody who's not experienced it? You know, and I took one look at it, and I said, "Gee whiz, it's still here." That you can walk around the streets of New York City if you've got your eyes open, and if you're really interested, and you can honestly see the past still standing there in the middle of some, you know, the most insane cacophony of aluminum buildings with green glass windows. Right in the middle of it is this weird thing standing there, and it's clear that nothing changes in a block en bloc. Have you ever looked at Hurley's? Now, this is probably the most classic example of what I'm talking about. There's a building on the corner. It is a classic example. It's on the corner of 49th and 6th Avenue. What do you mean? I don't have Curly's as a commercial. Is Jack yelling out there? Yeah, well, it's a bar, sure. But why is it that bars resist change more than anything else? What's the... I mean, what is the connection? I'm not a bar type, but what is the connection between that and the resistance to the, you know, the Reynolds Wrap buildings and one thing and another? I don't know. It's curious. I have gone in the middle of well, here, there's a typical example. Here you go into the Americana. Now, the Americana is a typical plastic building. I suspect any minute now a big wind is going to lay it right down over Queens. You know, just blow it right down. It's going to cover the whole east side. Wow, it's going to lay down. Have you ever had the feeling when you stand by the Pan Am building that you'd like to get about 7 friends of yours about 3 o'clock in the morning and just push it over? You know, and watch them. Hey, it's coming down. All the way up at Washington Heights. Hey, it's coming down. And it hits and the whole island goes, wow, wow. We'd start shipping water and tips. But I have gone. Now, here's an example. You go in the Americana. Now, what is the curious urge that makes us build this fantastic hip, or, you know, it's pseudo-modern, but it's modern. There it is. It's a big modern building. And in the middle of it all, they have bars called the Old American Oak Room type things, or the Revolutionary War Room. And they'll have old pewter mugs, and they'll have big ship's wheels, and they'll have stuff from whaling ships and old American 6-guns on the wall, right in the middle of a chromium steel plastic building. Now that's that thing, you know, that thing. Well, Hurley's, for those of you who don't know New York, Hurley's is on the corner, what is it, 49th, I believe, isn't it? Yeah, 49th and 6th. Well, now, you'd often not notice this, you know, if you just go past in a hurry, or if you don't know the story. But this is a classic story. They were building Rockefeller Center. Now, Rockefeller Center was supposed to be that whole block there, you know. Well, old man Hurley, apparently back in the Dark Ages, refused to give in. He would not sell. And so they built Radio City all around them. And now, in the middle of that fantastic complex, Rockefeller Center and the whole scene, stands this little building. It's about, 4 or 5 stories high. It's a building that looks like it was built not too long after the Civil War. No, seriously, there's a lot of these buildings, go back to well before that time. I lived in an apartment here in town. Seriously, I lived in an apartment, just a plain apartment. I got it, through an ad in the Village Voice or something, and I moved in. I lived down there. It was the one on 7th Street. And it wasn't until I lived in this place about 6 or 7 months till I learned this building had been built before the Civil War. Nobody said anything about it, just an old, crummy, rotten old building. But it was a great building for a lot of reasons that, had nothing to do with that. But Hurley's is a classic example of that thing that I'm talking about. Of course, that wouldn't happen now. They just blow them up. I mean, it wouldn't happen, I'll tell you. I've been, believe me, that happened obviously in a different age, that Rockefeller Center was built at a time when if a guy didn't want to sell, well, that was it, he didn't sell, and that was the end of it. But today, that would not happen. I can just see that it couldn't happen now. That if they were going to build a thing as monstrous as Rockefeller Center, giant, they would simply, one night, he would be pulled out of there like a bad tooth, the building's gone, that's it. And they put up a big stage with a lot of Rockettes hopping around, and the 4,000-story building. Have you wondered how our city's going to be 200 years from now? Boy, this is just a. Speaking of that, we've got another commercial here. We better get out of there. But 200 years from now, they'll probably still be making Peugeots. And for those of you who don't know anything about this car, I would suggest that you go down to 46th Street, 2 East. This is the middle of that fantastic high-rent district we've been talking about, where Hurley's is. 2 East 46th Street, just off 5th Avenue. And you'll see the French Peugeot, which is a fine automobile. It's been around since 1895. It drives, by the way, very well, which I think should be a test of a car. Hardly ever mentioned. Most cars are dreams today. This is a machine that goes on the highway, has a folding roof, sliding type, excellent seats, and beautiful paint. It's a good car. It's the French Peugeot, 2 East 46th Street. And oh yeah, that something flittered past my mind momentarily there, thinking about Hurley's and about places like that. I remember, it's funny when you talk about buildings, this city, and people in New York are like jungle creatures everywhere. They know their jungle, and the thing, like most jungle creatures, they're totally absorbed and concerned with the jungle itself. And so, if you mention buildings to a New Yorker, you'll make contact anytime. If you mention apartments, streets, traffic, you'll make contact with a New Yorker no matter what his level. He lives in this jungle.